Welcome to the Emajin Golf Podcast Beyond the 19th. I'm your host Raj Narayan, and today we chat to one of our platinum members, James Leslie Ward from Corson Fiske. James shares some valuable insights for all business owners on how to structure your business right from start to finish through the startup phase, growth phase, and getting your business prepared for exit. Hope you enjoy. James, you've been a member of Emajin just recently, and I've known you only for a short period, but I'm getting to know you really well and Corson Fiske. So I just want to say, look, it's fantastic to have you on the podcast and welcome.
Thank you, Raj, for having me attend.
Yeah, fabulous. So look, James, I thought, why don't we start at the beginning and have a bit of a chat about James Leslie Ward and understand more about you and your background. So tell me a bit about your early days. Obviously, you're a lawyer, but tell us a bit more about how you got into law.
Okay, so just back from my early days, from when I started out, I actually started out in the hospitality industry, working on the other side of the bridge here, down at the Rocks for Neil Perry.
Oh, wow.
Rockpool back in the early days in the 99, 2000. However, that was just a job that I decided to go into after high school because I really didn't know what to do. But after pretty much 2 years and $250 a week at pay rate working for 8 hours, I thought, there's better things on the other side of the table. And actually, quite interestingly, we had a lot of different CEOs and that would actually come into the restaurant at the time because there was a lot of US investment that was coming into Australia during the early 2000s. Met some pretty interesting people. And one of the CEOs at the time of one of the big airlines said to me, mate, you're not going to get the girl you want, the house you want, or the car you want, being an expletive cook.
Okay,
so pretty much from that time on, not short time later, actually, the folks were down the Southern Islands at that time and sold up and decided to head down to Melbourne and go back and study from there.
How interesting. I don't think we've ever had a story of someone who worked at Rockpool and then come and become a lawyer, which is very good.
Exactly. So, so in terms of like my background, I initially started out studying law, started at General Electric, spent some time there, which was interesting working for a big company. Quite quickly you find out that you're more of a number rather than a participant. However, at the end of the day, you work for a place like GE, you do learn a lot. The bigger side of things, especially in finance, does teach you a lot and gives you a good grounding. And it's pretty much, there's a bit of a star on your CV from an employment perspective. But when the GFC started to happen, a lot of things obviously in the financial world started to get a bit rocky, and with GE, pretty much a lot of people exiting at that time, and just saw the opportunity to actually start out in the finance industry myself, just starting a brokerage business at the time.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
fantastic. So, look, tell me a bit more. I mean, let's dwell a little bit more on the hospitality side. So how long were you there at Rockpool?
So I was only there for about 2 years at that time, but 2 years was long enough. And now that I'm on the other side, especially with the insolvency advisory side that we do quite a lot, we deal with a lot of hospitality businesses. So everything that you see in hospitality tells you every single reason why you shouldn't go into it. Unless you're passionate about it.
No, I tell you what, it's I think the hardest business to go into and the most number of failures of businesses happen in hospitality because the margins are so thin and there's so many elements, and usually people who go in there, they're more creative than they are like numbers based.
Exactly. And you're dealing with a wide range of personalities as well too. And people have this, Dolce Vita dream when they look at hospitality to think, I'll have the cafe and the whole Italian experience or whatever you're looking to get out of it. But the reality is the margins are thin, the overheads are huge, and it takes an incredible amount of patience and hours to really build a business like that. And it is a tough industry, and there's very few people in Australia that have been successful at it, and you're seeing now, some of the big groups that have really fallen down over the years, and partly too the impact of COVID. What happened?
COVID had a huge impact on hospitality, but also the thing is, right? There's huge competition. If you look at your Porter's 5 Forces, there's a lot of competition in the space, and the margins are way for thin. And a lot of the times, people are, usually good cooks or good chefs, or they have a passion for cuisine, and they open it up and they think that they get the menu, they get the location and go ta-da, and they expect that people will walk in the door.
Exactly.
And I always talk about this, you build a castle, and then you're waiting for people to come and live in this castle.
Yes.
But really hard to make that happen.
It is hard to make it happen. A lot of times you end up an
empty castle, and then each day, each table that's not filled, you're more and more under the pump. You're losing more and more money.
Exactly. And you've got to turn the tables over 2 or 3 times to actually make profit out of it.
Exactly, yeah.
And it also comes down to your costings. A lot of the things that I see in a lot of businesses in hospitality that fails, the fact that the costings are just way out. They're going to be very strategically measured to know what your margins are, because otherwise you're just giving way too much on the plate.
Exactly.
So
you're giving away too much, and then if you don't have enough turnover of, that utilization curve or the capacity curve, if you don't have enough people in your restaurant, then you just end up losing more and more. It's a vicious cycle.
That's it. It is a vicious cycle. And then even the marketing around it as well too. Like you'll see a new venue that'll open.
Yeah.
It'll be flat out for a year with the hype, and then it just dies down.
Yeah.
It's
because
about consistency.
People, like we want to eat at different restaurants. We want to go do different things. Like people don't want to do the same place, same restaurant or same food all the time. So it's interesting. And so going from there to a big, large corporate like GE would have been a big change.
Yeah, it was a big change. And even for me, because I really didn't do anything with the law background and the study at the time.
Yeah.
I just it's great, got that education, things like that. Not really my thing. The finance world was a lot more interesting from that view.
So many lawyers go into banking or some kind of finance. It's very common as well.
Exactly. And the grounding of that is just about deal structuring that you learn there, because the fact that, yes, we had the personal finance business that we had, but also GE Commercial. And GE Commercial at the time was quite large, had the aviation business, we had the commercial side as well too. Plus the reinsurance business, and you've done a lot of rotations in that as well too, and learnt quite a lot. And there's a lot of people and networks that you build out, or people that you meet down the track, that worked ever senior roles back in the day, or that point of time, you still run into these days, so they're still around,
I'm a big believer that I always say, whatever the name brand you have is the first one on your CV.
Yes.
That always opens doors. Same like
100%.
the university you go to, the first job you have, the second job you have, it really does open doors. So I'm a big believer that having some big name brands is a good thing for anyone. Even if you branch out on your own, or even if you do another business. I myself find that I've got a background in banking, and I've done a few board roles and senior roles, and they always end up giving you greater credibility. So I think it's good to have a nice big brand from there. Yep. So tell me the journey from there. I mean, you went into finance brokerage?
Yeah, so in the finance brokerage firm, we started that back in 2008, over a number of years. Had that up until about 2016, where I ended up exiting that business. Consumer finance at the time, I had quite a large automotive book as well too. Started white labelling products as well too. But with the consumer credit market, we're there at the early stages with the whole credit licensing regime. Went through that back in, would have been 2009. Pretty sure when NCCP come in. But later on, as it started to gain momentum, consumer credit industry just got too much of a difficult business from a compliance point of view to operate. So at that point of time, decided to exit that, and then started working in an advisory role with another business at the time. Spent quite a number of years there, but also I had an interest in intellectual property as well too. So my primary background is a trademark attorney, and always specialised in intellectual property law. So that was always just a passion of mine to build that, and it's just, I like brands and advertising, weirdly enough, something that I was just always interested in too, because I've got a creative arts background as well too. It's something that I do.
You've got an interesting thing.
I do it my spare time,
background,
in terms of painting and things like that. But yeah, it was just a passion of mine with IP. But from there we've then transitioned last year into Corson Fiske by merging the IP practice into the advisory business as well. So it's been pretty successful from that point of view the last 12 months.
Fantastic.
In terms of rapid expansion,
Yeah. So tell me a bit more about Corson Fiske and what you do over there.
Yeah, so in terms of what Corson Fiske does as an advisory business, we're dealing with a lot of clients from a risk perspective as a risk advisory business. So it might be from, the way that their company operations are structured. It could be what's impacting businesses now from an insolvency risk perspective, what they look like through safe harbour, how do they look like in terms of actually continuing their business if they're carrying large ATO debt and what their options are available to them. But we've also got the commercial side as well too. We've got a couple of great guys down in Melbourne, Peter and Solomon, who have really strong backgrounds as lawyers in Melbourne, really know their stuff, and that's really opened up the doors to provide some, really strategic advice around shareholders agreements. Also, mergers and acquisitions and due diligence for some of our clients as well too. They're looking to buy in, but our primary focus for the last 12 months has been really in the insolvency side and helping clients get through that massive hurdle, that tax debt burden that they're carrying at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So obviously you do a bit of structuring, law, and both advisory and law combined.
So it's a structuring, it's risk advisory, and then we've got the commercial legal as well too, to support our clients as well. And there's a couple of other external law firms that we work with as well too that have some other specialities that we just don't have the capabilities in, especially in the tax advisory on federal taxes as well too. We've had some great guys that have assisted our clients in that area as well.
Yeah, and obviously as someone going through looking after clients who are going through that insolvency or debt scenarios, you always look at things that they could have done differently to avoid being where they are, I suppose.
It comes down to what I call technical debt.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to have a crystal ball at the start. People start off small, they don't understand how big things can grow or go out of control. And people just, when they're starting a business, there's no course to do it. You can do an MBA and everything like that.
MBAs are the worst ones.
Tell the truth, at the end of the day, it doesn't tell you how to structure a company or anything like that. I can tell you because I've done one, you know what I mean? There's more event around, bond trading and things like that and how to value bonds and stocks, but and then from the management process and things like that. However, that postgraduate education was really good for me because it told me a lot of things that I was doing wrong over the years and made me think a lot different in my next ventures. But when people start out a business and they like this crystal ball, they don't understand that everything's piled into one basket. So they set up the one company, they have all the employees in there, they have all their trading in there, they have all their assets in there. Which is a simplified form which they start at, but they don't realise that, the other things that they should look at is, a dual company structure. Is there a holding company behind that? Do they have another trust that holds those shares in the holding company? And all these different various things, and even separate employee entities as well too, for servicing employees and keeping the employees out of the trading entity. And that's really important to go back to hospitality with some of the, the clients I've worked with in the past that are in hospitality who have, multiple venues where they need to have that separate service employment entity so they can actually, have their employees work at different venues without having to, because they're all separate trading entities as well too, and their own respective trusts and whatever they've got structured, to simplify it from an administrative process, especially if, a 40 venue hospitality group could be carrying 200, 300 employees. It's pretty hard to manage, in each respective venue. But at the end of the day, as I said, no one has a crystal ball on these things for what go wrong, and the things that go wrong is when that business partnerships in a company, they don't have a shareholders agreement, which is primarily the number one thing that we always see people was they start out as friends and then turn into foes much later on when the money is on the table.
I always say that when back in the day when we were in uni and we were sharing accommodation, you always say, your friends you move in with are the ones that's the end of the friendship. Exactly. The same with business. The friends you start a business with, that's the end of that friendship.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's a great way to put your friendship to the test.
Exactly. And when these things happen, the missing the shareholders agreement, not having the company structured correctly and things like that, that's when down the track the technical debt issues creep in where, a client might have a tax liability that's just blown out of control and not due to any fault of their own, like misspending the money or anything like that. It's just some people just think the company is a bank account. You know, some directors, because a lot of people, they're great at selling, they're great at doing a thing, but in terms of administrative and understanding, you know, various federal tax laws or even state tax laws when it comes to payroll tax, they've just got no understanding around that. And that's where, you know, Div 7A loans creep in and things like that, that have obviously other ramifications down the track from an insolvency perspective.
So it's interesting. And I'm surprised to see that there are so many people starting a business without a shareholders agreement. You'd think that that's so basic, that people should have it.
You think they would, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of companies and platforms out there where you can easily just set up a company online, which will give you, you know, your company structure and your constitution. That's it. That's what you've got to operate off. But that and then they set up the bank accounts the way they go. They just don't take into account these things or think at the time, you know, oh, do I really need to spend that money?
That's right.
And that's the thing, you know, it might, yes, it does cost money to do things right at the start, but the benefits outweigh it far down the track once you've got that advice. And that's, you know, that's not saying, you know, just a legal practitioner or something to set up that. That just starts with your accountant or talking to an accountant that's there to, you know, help you set up those things, because that's the starting point. And always encourage people to do that, even though we provide that advice in relation to structuring operations, that should have a chat with your accountant just from day one, or get one to make sure that you have your basics in line, you know what I mean? And if your accountant's good enough, they'll be able to guide you, you know, in the right direction to, you know, get the shareholders agreements and things like that in place.
Fabulous. So look, obviously, as you see these various structures in business and so forth, you find all the pitfalls of what not to do. So if you were a business owner and I was wanting to properly structure my business, obviously the first thing is to have your shareholders agreement or set it up correctly. And you know, you said you worked in IP, so that's a big element as well. Whatever your brand is or your trademarks are, even though early in the piece you think that who's going to want to take this brand or trademark, soon, you know, you could become really big and you don't anticipate that, so it's protection. But tell me a bit more from your thoughts on what might be great things that business owners, as you know, all the Emajin members, we're all business owners and executives, so what might be some good things for them to look at in terms of structuring their business properly?
As we were just touching base on earlier, in terms of structuring the business, yes, getting your company set up from day one. If you have other shareholders involved and other directors involved, obviously have those shareholder agreements, but still get them in place regardless if you're the sole director shareholder, because down the track that you may want to bring in other parties or other investors into the business. The other side as well too, if you've got your assets in your business, you know, you're purchasing, you know, trucks, trailers, plant and equipment or anything like that, you want to have a separate entity that you purchase those assets through, and then look at renting them or leasing them back to the business with a security agreement in place. But probably the number one thing I should actually touch on is that everyone lends money to a business from their personal capacity, whether it's borrowing from the house, or redrawing on the mortgage, or just taking money from personal savings. And the thing that they should do from day one, as soon as they transfer that money from their bank account to their company bank account, is put in a security agreement, which is a all PAP under the PPSA, so Personal Property Securities Act. So once they've got that registration in place, it's just like a bank lending money to you as a business, that they're the primary secured creditor at the end of the day.
Of the business,
So if things do go wrong, at least you've got security over the money that you've put in. You've got the opportunity to get something back should things go wrong at the end of the day. Plus, you've got a lot more control as well too from an insolvency perspective as well. But a good point that you touched on is the IP side. Intellectual property is really important, especially if you start a new brand name that you might not think you have any traction on. For, you know, a small amount of money, you know, a few $1,000s, you register, you know, set up, speak with an attorney or legal practitioner about registering a trademark and look to secure those rights at the start. But also too, before you even use a brand, is that you should actually speak to an attorney or a legal practitioner about, can you use it from the start? Because I've seen some absolute horror stories over the years where and there's a prime example of a past client that we had. They'd spent probably $30,000 to $40,000 with a branding agency to come up with this brand. There was absolutely no clearance work done on the brand in itself.
Yeah.
They printed merchandise, they printed pens, they done all this stuff, you know, for the brand, only to then approach us later on and then give us the brand to do a clearance search and the freedom to operate after they'd been using it for so long. And what come about was, you know, some pretty significant businesses like Amazon and some other companies owns very similar trademarks.
Oh, wow.
Which at the end of the day, there was absolutely no chance of them getting registration in Australia because of the fact that these trademarks were the close in similarity and for the same business. You know, it's actually quite concerning for the client because they spend all this money, and this is the problem. A lot of people they'll spend on branding, but there's no clearance work being done to actually see if they can actually use that mark before they trade in the marketplace.
Yeah, and look, it's so interesting you say this because obviously at Emajin when we started, and you can see the name is spelled so funny, Emajin, and I thought, who's going to have this? Who's going to have this name?
Exactly.
No one, exactly, because originally it was around being golf reimagined.
Yes.
Or networking reimagined, so it was Imagine Golf. But I didn't want to have an I in the front. I thought, because we don't own a course, it's all E. So I thought Emagine, and then it was too many E's, so we made it cut the last E and then change it from G to J. So that's how kind of Imagine the name came about. And perhaps we'd had too many glasses of red wine by the time we came to the spelling. But the reality is that, you know, I just thought, who the hell is going to have this name? But even then, you know, I'm a big believer in registering things. And I thought, look, we'll register a trademark and we'll go to the IP. And when we went up, there was actually another Imagine company. They were not trading at the moment, but somebody obviously in the past had come up with this name.
Yes.
So no matter what name, and they had nothing to do with golf, they had nothing to do with anything that's in a competitive nature. So we could still register Imagine for networking, golf, all of that. I think this company was there long ago and they used to sell kitchen items, kitchen appliances or something. And they've gone bust, so there's no company. But what I'm saying is something so unique a name, you still have someone who's had it before. So no matter what other name you come up with, there's always some, you know, it's important to do clearances.
It is, yes.
And when I was actually starting the business, and you'll be mortified when you hear the story, is I wanted to just see, you know, play around with the name Imagine, whatever. So I put it actually on, you know, the 24-hour brands, 24-hour logos online. And I said, look, I'm going to put it on 24 hours logo and just come up with different designs and things, just to see whether I even like it, whether it resonated with me. Because it was so unique that, I find that every time I speak about Imagine, the first time I always have to spell it. And then I never have to spell it again because they always remember because it's so unique. It's not confused with anything else. So I put it on 24-hour logos, and I got a few different logos with Emagine, with Emagin, JIN, all of this like random things. And in fact, someone developed this logo, which is the one I have at the moment. And I thought, I quite like this. I said, it looks like a bit like an EG, looks a bit like Mercedes-Benz, but I thought, maybe it looks good. So I thought, I quite like this name. So we landed on Emajin, then went in and got a brand agency to develop a logo. So this was just a play around to see whether I like it. Got the brand agency to develop a logo, and they came up with all these logos, and I hated every one of them. So I went back, paid all this money, and then went back and had this 24-hour logo, which I think I paid $99 for. But same, when we went to register it, there was so, a lot of process. Exactly.
There's a lot of process, and there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, because it doesn't mean that if your brand name is unique that you're necessarily going to get the trademark registration, because the IP Australia might come back with an objection to say, okay, this is more of a descriptive or a generic term that other people might want to use in the industry. We've got a client at the moment who component of their trademark is absolutely. However, they've come back IP Australia to show that this is a common word that someone might want to use within general terms of trade or business, and they've got to prove honest concurrent use. And honest concurrent use, proving that is really significant. It comes down to, what's their spend on advertising, what their financials are, all these kind of things that overcome that hurdle.
And what is this honest?
Honest concurrent uses show that
somebody can use it as well as you.
Honest concurrent uses demonstrate that you've used the trademark for a specific amount of time or over a number of years in the market, and concurrently use that over a set period of time, so that you've actually earned your brand's own distinctiveness as a logo or trademark to be accepted from that perspective. But the other side of it as well too that we've seen that's really gone wrong for a lot of people where they've had that honest and current use for a long time, that never registered the trademark. A competitor has then gone to try and register the same trademark. Now, that competitor's not going to register that trademark because under the Trademarks Act in Australia, it's priority of use. So the first day that you start trading with that name, without let's say if you register with ABR or anything, you've got priority of use. You can demonstrate that as long as no one else has used it in the marketplace. So you can easily put it, you can put an objection against that application that someone's made once the trademark is accepted with IP Australia. However, the issue that we've seen for a number of clients is that, yes, they've gone to register, a competitor has registered a trademark. They've then, gone to register the trademark themselves as well too. However, the prior application is stopping them from getting that hurdle, whereas the prior application might have been knocked back for various reasons. They've then got a time frame of waiting for that application to fall over, so then you've got to do deferrals and things like that to get it through. So there's a lot around it, and I find it's actually becoming harder and harder, you know, with some trademark applications, just because there's so many brands out there, there's so many applications being made a day, and just trying to have that distinctiveness of a unique logo. If you're trying to register, word marks, it makes it 10 times harder. But if you've got that distinct logo, I believe, like from my perspective, it's much more easier to get across the line, as long as there's no other conflicting prior marks that are registered in the same class of goods that you're seeking registration.
But it's so much, isn't it? It's too big a hurdle.
It is.
And yet, even though it's a bit of process and in the early days, you probably think, it's a lot of effort, and a lot of money for nothing. But the reality is, you really protect your business. Because
you protect your business, exactly, and it leads on to bigger things. You know what I mean? Especially if you start with your IP protection in Australia, and then you decide to expand overseas. And you've got the opportunity to license that brand. Companies like Billabong and things like that didn't grow from setting up overseas operations or manufacturing T-shirts in America or anything like that. That was pretty much a licensing play. So they had their primary IP registered in Australia, but then they, set up their operations and licensing of their brands in United States, Japan, Europe, all those countries, and then pretty much entered into a license agreement with licensors who manufactured that brand and sold that brand overseas, which at the end of the day, they were receiving a royalty from, and Gordon Merchant turned it into an absolute conglomerate, you know what I mean, until they listed, and then it went all backwards from there. But that is a really good example of how licensing and branding success, can continue, and it can be replicated in anything these days.
Even golf-based networking.
Exactly. The golf business is a prime example of it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like look at Liv, L-I-V. What a genius branding idea. And that will all be licensed. To different various operators in the sports marketing industry. Obviously they'll have their ownership interest in it and skin in the game, but that's how the business of golf works. It's all licensing. It's all branding.
Fantastic. So obviously, getting the shareholders agreement in place, getting your brand protected through trademarks, and also the when you loan money in, getting the document in place. So you have the first right of recourse. So then tell me a bit more about, operating and running your business, and maybe even exiting your business.
Exiting a business is the big thing at the end of the day, because a lot of people don't think about it. They always want to hold on to it, and we're seeing an ageing population now of, people that started businesses 50, 60 years ago, even 40, 30 years ago, that have sort of come to the end, where the kids don't want to take on, or they aren't part of any of the business at all. And it's virtually going to the point, well, okay, what are we going to do now to continue that? And it's about having a good succession plan or an exit plan from day one, and structuring the business right, so that down the track it can be exited, you know what I mean? And the accountant's going to give you good advice around that, especially in relation to how any shares or anything like that should be held within the business to exit it down the track. But at the same time too, it's all about having your systems in place, but also be able to show that bottom line value in the business, not treating it as a personal bank account, having obviously the right compliance in place, having the right systems in place. Obviously, IT infrastructure and technology plays a big part now. And you look at acquisitions, especially now, and I was listening to Blackstone's conference that they had just recently, probably about 4 days ago. Their investment committee now has a 2-page section of their reports that they review is like, what's the AI risk to this business? You know, if we buy this thing, are we going to be, you know, throwing money down the drain? Because obviously there's the hype of AI. A lot of people talk about it, but do they understand at the same time? But you know, these investment committees are now looking at businesses. Is that going to be impacted? You know what I mean? Because you look at, say, the taxi industry that went right up, you know, to a point, I think was about 2016 in terms of their chart, where it was booming and booming and booming. And then, you know, the likes of Uber and all that come along, and then it just disintegrated to turn into valueless businesses. So
and AI is going to have a massive impact. I mean, I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
And I feel like there'll be so many industries which will be completely decimated. There'll be nothing, because everything can be done by AI faster and quicker and everything else. And then there'll be some where, you know, there's still huge opportunities for AI to shape the way where the industry goes. So like a lot of the tasks that are done by junior people, like they're all going to be just taken over by AI. And so then I feel like what we do will be the more value-added tasks. So there'll be a bit of that natural,
There will, and even for our industry, you know, we use like a lot of AI tools, like proprietary AI tools, especially in terms of drafting and things like that have taken away hours of work. However, at the same time too, you do need to run a set of eyes over them, because of the fact that even these are proprietary software that we license and use from the providers. They do get things wrong, you know. But at the end of the day, in terms of, you know, drafting an agreement or things like that, they can slim it down within minutes. There's something that would take you a couple of hours.
I find that as well when I'm writing a document or a speech or a social media post or anything. It takes me seconds. And I can give 7 variations, or change this, change that, boom, it's done in like 5 minutes. And I remember back in the day, there's an article that I have on my phone. It's in year 2000. I was in the papers, and it basically said the internet is a passing fad, and millions are leaving it. Millions are leaving the internet in droves or something like that. People are leaving, and you kind of think about it and think about COVID and actually having no internet. So even though it looked like that at the time and people didn't believe it, it's taken or it reshaped the way we do lead our lives. Same with social media. I remember a time when there was no social media. I remember the flip phones. I display my age, but you look at social media. So many jobs: social media manager, content creator. These didn't exist, and I think that's what will happen with AI. AI will take away so many jobs, but then it'll also create so many jobs, which will be the prompt engineer and people who now have technology or or technical skills to be able to utilize AI. So I feel like it'll take away certain jobs, but then it will create other jobs.
Yeah, it does a dynamic
eventually,
shift.
it'll be a dynamic
especially
shift.
in terms of business operations. Like you saw that with to go back to GE General Electric when they had their GE Money branch network. They probably had, I think, at least probably 8 to 10 staff and each different site all around Australia. That's a lot of leases and a lot of overhead in different various locations around the start. And then when Latitude bought the old GE Money business out and transitioned it to Melbourne, I believe that's where they operate from, the old GE site in Burnley there. It's all back office operations. All the client facing now is done with the internet. All approvals are done in the back room, all automated through their systems. Plus, they've also got the Latitude network through Harvey Norman and with the old GE credit line card system, which prior to that, people go right back, was AGC, which was already there. But that whole client-facing retail for financial services has really gone away now, even for the banks as well too. The banks are. You see with the staff cut numbers that they're doing now, it's mainly around their sort of compliance areas that they've reduced because they brought in automation to do most of those checks and measures. But it's going to be an interesting shift on how it changes businesses from that perspective. AI has been around for a long time, but it's how it's utilised.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not been utilised. Even now, we're hardly touching the surface of where we can get to. And like our business like ours, I always think, golf and networking, it probably wouldn't be taken over by AI. You still want to play golf yourself and not send your
You can't take away people,
bot.
exactly.
But I do think that it'll change the shape of the business where I feel like for us, it's going to give us maximum capacity.
Yes.
Because we could utilize AI to create a lot of our matchmaking. So when we talk about, connecting the right people, putting them in the right groups, seating them in the right table, invariably we could use AI to create these, our custom connection system at a significantly higher capacity. And I think it'll allow us to run more events, more things for our members, because the existing staff can be utilized to do more front-facing things rather than doing T-sheets and back-facing things. Because our job now is there's a lot of planning and there's a lot of execution.
Yes.
So I feel like a lot of planning is going to be so streamlined that we can have a lot more execution. And more venues and things like that.
And it's about definitive answers as well too. One of the big technology focuses for us that we're working on at the moment is actually in the insolvency space when clients are asking these questions or seeking advice or seeking answers to questions, how we can use AI agents to actually answer that for people. So we're working on some web platforms and things at the moment that will start to introduce either later in the year or early next year once we've our software developers and programmers have gone through that, where people can, ask the questions and enter their financial data and things like that. That's safe and safeguard proprietary at the same time. It's not being shared with the chat GPTs of the world, and actually have a bit of a definitive solution about, okay, can I undertake a small business restructure? Can I undertake a voluntary administration? Or what are my other options? Or what other issues could I potentially face from a risk perspective as well too? So, that's the change for us that will start to really bring in. And I think it'll have a lot of significant impact, especially for that SME market, because we do look after and deal with quite a lot of the higher turnover, bigger businesses that we advise. But there's a whole subset of SME operators that are underserviced or not getting that advice and just making some fatal mistakes. That would otherwise they shouldn't have gone into at the end of the day to be able to save their business or be able to continue, because the one thing for us, there's a huge human element to what we do with a lot of our clients, is the emotional side, but the human element as well too. Because for most people, this is their livelihood.
Yeah.
So we actually care about, the client and what we do, because at the end of the day, you take something away, that's substantial to them and funds their whole being. Losing a business is dramatic, you know what I mean? It's a big thing for a lot of people, and the unknown out there of what's going to happen.
Yes, that's right. So that's amazing. Some great advice there, James. And I just want to say, where to from here for Corson Fiske? Where do you see yourself, and what is the next phase of growth?
So pretty much for the next stage for us in terms of growth, we've got some interesting joint ventures with a couple of commercial law firms at the moment and potential acquisitions on the future, but also, a further expansion into Southeast Asia and Singapore as well too. We've got our office over there as well. That's mainly around the advisory side in terms of clients that are coming into Australia looking to acquire businesses as well. There's also another accounting side practice that we're looking to acquire and bring in more of a CFO advisory role as well too, to provide a full holistic approach to a lot of those businesses that are in a growth trajectory phase, which are being serviced by their accountant. However, they do need someone in there from a interim chief financial officer position to actually oversee the operations of the business and how that's moving forward to actually get them ahead, because they're at that stage where they're doing 5 to 10 million in terms of revenue. They're still being serviced by their accountant really well. However, the communication could be better with their accountant. And also a third set of eyes to take them to the next stage to get past that 10 million to that, that 10 to 20 million revenue base. And that's when it gets to that step where where our CFO advisors would actually step away from that point of view, and actually that's when we assist them with, installing the right person who has the experience and, the knowledge and know-how to fulfil that role. So it's not just what we do from whether it's a commercial legal point of view, the insolvency financial side. It's also, how operations structured as well too, and how we can actually assist clients in that area as a big growth position for us. And we've met some actually interesting people through Emajin on that perspective as well too, of just potential service providers that we can bring into with our clients as well too, that offer services that we just won't go into because it's not our core feature, but it is an additional value add because for us it's about delivering value. If we can't deliver value to a client, we can't fix a specific issue, or we just don't have the skill set, we don't take it on. There's no point in doing that. There's too many people out there that charge money for things that just don't go ahead. The worst I've seen so far was a client that come to us and he was literally facing bankruptcy. There's no doubt about it. Made the mistake of going as a director for a family business. Tax debts were racked up to the point of $3 million.
Oh, wow.
He was given advice to go and take it to the federal court to fight the ATO.
Yeah. Oh my God.
No chance.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no chance.
Why would you do that?
But the fact of the matter is, he had it in his head that he was going to win. It's like, well, unfortunately, he ended up going to bankruptcy. There was solutions for him to solve it, but litigation's not the solver at the end of the day, especially if the ATO.
It's a way to go more bankrupt.
Exactly. You just don't get into those fights. And it's There's better ways to do things.
Now, this is great. Look, James, it's been fantastic to chat with you and learn a lot more about how to structure the business, and also some great advice for business owners to look at things in a different way that they probably wouldn't look at, because you always think that nothing bad's ever going to happen to me, but then it's still good to protect yourself in case they did. And you never think you're going to exit the business, but it's still good to build a business with an exit in mind. Even if you don't exit, it's still good to have that business is ready for exit.
And it's just doing that, what we do with our clients is just having that general conversation, that initial risk review. Where you're at now, where you're going, what are you trying to achieve, and then looking at all the different various gaps in between that should be there. You know what I mean? And if there's any value or that can be put towards what our services are or what can we assist with, you know what I mean? It's really about that value add for the long term, to be able to deal with that technical debt that comes down the track if things do go wrong. Yeah.
Fantastic. Look, it's been fantastic chatting with you. And I think I'm going to wrap up with asking you one last question. What are your thoughts or goals for golf?
Goals for golf?
Yes.
Goals for golf, I was talking to Ben because I've just done the clinics, and my old man was like an absolute golf psycho. Okay. I remember one school holidays, he put me in a golf camp for 2 weeks down at Ivanhoe Golf Club in Melbourne. So I'll never forget it, because that first tee, it's like a big dip and then it's like a big hill up the other side. So as soon as you hit it, it sinks. So, but the goals for golf, sorry to go off track, but it was just a hit straight, and I spent a bit of time with Ben at the clinic. Yeah. And I like listening to Ben because you're trying to hit a golf ball. He sounds like purely some bloke off Happy Gilmore. The way he talks, like, nice swing, keep that up. So it's actually a good positive from him. When you're playing, is actually just keep laughing every time I think about it. But it's next one, our major that we're having at St Michael's, I believe, coming up on the 30th of October. It's to actually get on the course and play a game. To actually do the 18, because since I've been a member, I've just been going to these clinics and hitting down the fairway with a driver, but not actually, putting things into practice. So that's to play this month, next month, October.
Fabulous.
Get out there.
Fantastic. That's what we're going to help you do, James. That's going to be our job. Fabulous. Look, it's been fantastic chatting to you, and thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you.